Guess I have to learn how to edit because I accidentally hit the stop button instead of the whatever. So we'll go back a little and let's listen.
Talked about of Plato and Pythagoras and all of these guys. How could people thousands of years ago know about quantum physics, electrons, and nuclear energy? Who taught them? And here Dr. Narby asks, how could shamans in the middle of the Amazon jungle know about the molecular properties in plants and the art of combining them? Who told them? Where did they get it from? How is it possible? And see, of course, we look at them and say, well, we're the civilized people. We have drugs. They're, bush people. They don't know. But now suddenly we're starting to use the same thing he was using. Now listen to the science involved here. What do you think? People in the middle of the jungle. No schools, no universities, no medicine, no doctors, no nothing. But this guy sitting around a fire said, what do you got? I'll cure you. Try to consider how these people in the middle of the Amazon jungle could do this. The green plant here is called ayahuasca, Ayahuasca. A-Y-A. I'll have to go back and look at that again. Huasca. Huasca. That's what's involved. Okay? These people have used the brew for ages. The interesting point, now this is what you got to pay attention to because these are what you would call savages in the middle of the jungle. The interesting point, according to Dr. Narby, is that in order for this thing to work, you must combine two plants which must be boiled together for hours. The first contains a hallucinogenic substance called, oh my God, dimethyl, dimethyl triptane. D-I-M-E.
Dimethyltryptamine.
T-H-Y-L.
You're messing me up. DMT.
Where am I? T-H-Y-L. T-R-Y-P-T.
Love this guy.
A-M-I-N-E.
Which you have in your brain anyway. We all have it.
Which seems also, according to Dr. Narby, to say this stuff is also secreted by the brain. The human brain.
Yeah.
But this hallucinogenic
Fraud.
has no effect whatsoever when swallowed because there's a stomach enzyme that blocks it.
Blood-brain
So it can't work.
barrier. Gotta break that.
The second plant that they have to put in and boil with it, however, has substances that inactivate the precise stomach enzyme, allowing this hallucinogenic to reach the brain.
Damn.
So out of the billions and billions and billions
To basically break the blood-brain barrier, which is not an easy task to do in the jungle with no... Wow.
of plants and trees and all of this stuff, somehow they found this and realized that in order for this to work, they had to combine it with this because the stomach enzyme that would stop this is destroyed by this, and so then the hallucinogenic can work. Now they knew that. So with all the billions and billions of green plants, somehow they knew which two that had to be combined to get the desired effect. And this really fascinated Narby. He said, how in God's name could they know that? Somehow out of all the green in the Amazon, they found the plant with a hallucinogenic brain hormone and combined it with a vine that inactivated the enzyme of the digestive tract, which would have otherwise blocked the effect. And they do this for the express purpose of modifying or changing their consciousness.
Damn.
So in order for them to get this, to change their consciousness, they knew that they had to combine it with this here.
What was the this, Bill?
I don't know what the this is. It's another.
Please say.
Yeah. about the power of green light here. Photosystem 1, as NASA would say, the Green Party. And this is what Narby went on to say. If they knew.
It's almost if they knew, hence the Green Party. They weren't really talking about making it green.
Molecular properties of plants and the art of combining them. When one asks them how they know these things, they say that their knowledge comes directly from the plants.
I knew he was going to say
The plants tell them. Huh?
But someone had to make the combination accidentally to begin with.
Well, they basically, to do something like that, when you have a direct reason for doing it, and you combine something that accomplishes such a thing as deliberately destroying an enzyme that will allow this thing to flow to the brain, there has to be a very, very important and intelligent cause of there.
That's like legit medical, what have you, being able to break the blood-brain barrier. Like, that's science to the molecular of structure.
And not in any way, shape, or form an accident. That's what Narby gets into. Well, anyhow, a message then is conveyed.
Which Narby, by the way, is an anthropologist, not a shaman. He's just in the forest with one.
To them from the green plants. This is what I want you to concentrate on. An intelligent message that comes from the outside to the inside and communicates somehow in a coded way that is decoded by the brain. And I want you to start thinking of this because I want you to start thinking about how meditation works. I want to reach the point of being able to say, this is how it works. If we say that this occurs, this is how it occurs. What is coming from the outside can enter the body, as it does with these people, and when it enters the body, an intelligent conversation takes place between DNA that came in and DNA that's in. Yeah. And so then a change happens to the body. A change happens to consciousness. A change happens to intelligence. An intelligent message that comes from the outside. So Narby arrived at an initial conclusion, and he put it this way. Their knowledge was undeniable. In other words, it wasn't a question of you coming and saying, well, they're healing people. They're treating diseases by stuff that doctors and hospitals all know nothing about, other than the fact that they do this, and this works. Their knowledge was undeniable, he says, but their explanations concerning the origin of their knowledge was unbelievable to me. That's what he said. My attitude was ambivalent. On the one hand, I wanted to understand what they thought about the reality of spirits. But on the other, I couldn't take seriously what they said because I did not believe it. Not unlike what we were talking about, the ancient Greeks. They have the knowledge. They prove that, but how in the world did they get it? I mean, Democritus had the knowledge about the electrons and how an electron moves out of its orbit inside of an atom, but how did he get that information? Where did he get it from? And so then you have these people who are doing this stuff and concocting now this is just one thing, concocting all of these different herbs and all of these different things and giving them to people and treating diseases. How did they get this information from? Because in order to do that, they have to know how the body works, and then they have to know the molecular structure of the medicine they're putting together. I mean, they're mixing medicine just like you're doing at the drugstore across the street, only they're doing it in the middle of the jungle. It's the same thing, but it's from the earth. How do they know that? In 1992, Dr. Narby, the anthropologist, and incidentally, he has a book out called The Cosmic Serpent and DNA. Yeah. And in 1992, he attended a conference on the development and the environment. One of the prime discussions was the ecological knowledge of the people of the forest. And they were talking about, how these people take care of, the land and ecology and all of this stuff. Everyone knew that somehow these people knew these strange things, but no one was talking about the hallucinatory origin as claimed by the people themselves. In other words, the people say their knowledge comes to them from plants, and the scientists couldn't consider such a thing. This is stupid. This is ridiculous. So this was Narby's predicament. His colleagues came up to him, and this is what he said. They said, Narby, you're telling us that Indians claim they get molecularly verifiable information from hallucinations. You don't take them seriously, do you? And so what could he answer? What could you say? I mean, they're not just saying, the plants make me feel good, or the plants give me... They're saying they get molecularly verifiable information. In other words, what they're doing, scientists can verify the molecular structure of what they're using, and the molecular structure of the body say, hey, we can verify this is they're right on. But what the scientists are having trouble with is because the people that are using this stuff and are right on are saying, the plants tell us how to do this. Because Narby says, what could I say to them? There's nothing one can say without contradicting two fundamental principles of Western knowledge. One, hallucinations cannot be the source of information. Western knowledge considers hallucinations to be, at the best, illusion, and at the worst, morbid phenomena. Number two, plants
And they'll throw you in a nut house real quick.
do not communicate like human beings. Only human beings use abstract symbols like words and pictures, and plants do not relay information in the form of mental images. That's what we thought.
How would we know? We're not a walking, talking plant. We're a walking, talking battery radio receiver.
So Narby then has his dilemma, doesn't he? On the one hand, the results of the knowledge of the people of the forest is proven. They know somehow, molecularly, the structure of these things, so they can then deal with the glands and the different parts of the body that need to be touched by this molecular stuff. And actually, the things that have come out of the forest are also used by the pharmaceutical industry in making drugs. An alternative healing.
I should have said that already. Pretty much any and everything you have from Big Pharma comes from a herb or root or what have you. Something that initially started from the earth. Lithium, for God's sake. I mean, hello.
Agents in plants and so forth. And remember that NASA calls this result photosystem 1, which is the greatest power on Earth and the result of green light.
No, definitely not the biggest NASA Nazi Newsom fan, but I will say that, especially in 1992 and 1999, they were probably saying a little bit more than needed to be said because it went over everybody's head anyway, and it still mainly does.
But on the other hand, Narby says its origin cannot be discussed scientifically because it contradicts the axioms of Western science and Western knowledge. So it's like alternative medicine. It works, but it shouldn't because it's not taught in medical school.
And one thing I just want to say there is, what do doctors do? Really think about that for a minute. What do doctors do? We'll stay in our green color. They, you see this word? They practice. Okay, we'll try that again. Doctors. Who's the one person, one occupation that is allowed to just see what happens? Let's hope for the best. They practice medicine. So they're just practicing because they don't have the spiritual connection like the men and the women in the middle of the Amazon do. So they're just practicing over here to hope to get it right. And everything Mr. William Donahue is saying is so on the mark it could not be.
So what are we going to do? So now Narby realizes that the subject of plants communicating with people is a dead end. I mean, you can't go into a scientific community and start talking.
But we do know that, like, singing to them, talking to them, they flourish way more. All that's been proven.
About this, but he was really getting psyched out. And in his book, The Cosmic Serpent, DNA, he realized.
But I guess he's saying, like, how can the plant come and be like, take me and mix me with that vine over there? Well, you know, crazier things have happened.
That to get to the bottom of the mystery that comes from the center of the Amazon forest, that he really had to devote and spend a lot of his attention doing it. So he comes to an encounter with a deep question that he had to explore. And this is the question he put forth. What if it were true that nature does speak in symbols and signs?
Boom.
Hidden meanings.
Always follow the symbols, way ahead of any type of language, Hebrew, Greek, what have you. Symbols always first. Then you can get going on your language kick, but symbols.
And that the secret to understanding nature's language consists in noticing similarities in shapes and forms. What if it's true? What if nature actually places inside of us a coded message that is somehow cosmic DNA,
love that,
communicating with our physical DNA, and we start to know things?
There's got to be something to that. I mean, I know there is. How else do things like telepathy, for that matter, exist? And okay, maybe you're like, oh, that's such a crazy outlandish thing to say. However, think about anybody with an animal. You have a telepathic relationship with your dog or cat, no question. You know when it's saying, hey, I want to go out and just like throw the ball or go smell things, versus I want to go outside and go to the bathroom, or I want a walk, or I am hungry. That's all telepathic talking.
And this is what Narby said. It had become clear to me that these people were somehow gaining access in their visions to verifiable information about plant properties. In other words, they were hallucinating from these plants, and during the hallucination, they were gaining verifiable information that...
As he has taught me, I would say, in the way his hand is, I would say from light that was being shining down on these people, the light that was coming through their bodies and hitting different angles within the brain, etc. Messages of angels, aren't they messengers? So
be verified by a university or a prestigious drug firm, and they were getting it by swallowing plants. So now he's faced with a question. There was no doubt these people were getting information from somewhere. But here was his question. Was this information coming from inside the human brain, as the scientific point of view would have us, or was it coming from the outside world of plants? In other words, was there something inside of the brain that was stimulated to say, oh, this is what you have to do? Or was the information actually coming from the plant itself that was being ingested? Now, the outside world of plants, if you look at Photosystem 1, NASA calls it the greatest power on Earth. A description of the molecular code reads like an encrypted message. That's what NASA said. There's a so look at...
Well, I mean, if NASA's going to say that's the most important thing, I would at least pay attention to it.
The connection I'm trying to get you to understand here. These people are saying that by taking this stuff, they're getting a message. NASA is saying that what is in the stuff that they're taking is an encrypted message coming from green light. The people of the forest say they're getting the information from the plants themselves. And that's what NASA is confirming, that light entering into chlorophyll of all plants and the hema of humans does exactly this. Angles of light, messenger particles. This really, of all the years you've been alive, of all the years...
And I have yet to see this. I just knew it would be good because this man is phenomenal.
You've gone to church. Of all the years you've listened to people preach, you're finally coming face to face with the nature of God. How does God communicate with you? How does meditation, how does prayer, how is this communication, how can something from the outside come inside of you and communicate and do something for you? How could there be this messenger? Well, now it seems as though these people are stumbling on the fact that the DNA from the outside, which is an encrypted message, comes and communicates with the DNA on the inside, and something changes. So, in his book, The Cosmic Serpent, Narby first had to look at this scientifically. And he says, the similarity between the molecular profiles of natural hallucinogens, plants, I find to be consistent with that which is in the brain called serotonin. It seemed well and truly to indicate that both the hallucinogenic plant that these people were talking about and serotonin are like keys that fit into the same lock inside of the human brain. In other words, what he's saying is that the stuff from the plants is comfortable and fits into the lock of consciousness in the same way as a natural brain substance, which is called serotonin. So he took the next step. And this is where Narby decided, this is what I've got to do. He did the same thing that Carl Jung did. You remember what Carl Jung did? Carl Jung had all of these people coming who were totally whacked out. And they were seeing all of these crazy things. And he couldn't figure out what in God's name are you talking about. So he had to open a bottle and take it, like Dr. Hyde or Dr. Jekyll, whatever it is, and actually consume it. And they said to Dr. Jung, you are a prestigious psychoanalyst. What are you doing to yourself? He said, how in God's name am I going to understand these people if I don't experience what they're experiencing? And he did. Narby said the same thing. He was reaching a point where to understand what these people were experiencing and saying, he took hallucinogenics. This is a distinguished anthropologist from Stanford University in California. And when he took them and had the experience, it led him to disagree with the scientific position that hallucinations are merely discharges of images stacked in the subconscious. I was convinced, he said, that the enormous fluorescent snakes that I had seen thanks to Ayahuasca did not correspond in any way to anything that I could have dreamed of, even in my most extreme nightmares. And before...
That's heavy duty, and I want to say so much, but I do not want to interrupt it because it's so good.
Before you worry too much about those snakes, remember what the snake is: DNA.
Damn, mic drop.
So he was reaching a point because of his knowledge and his own experiences of finding increasingly easy to suspend disbelief. And here is this prestigious anthropologist from Stanford University, great scientist, ready to consider the point of the jungle people as potentially correct, that the plants told them. Now, he had to come to the point of considering the possibility that the plants communicate with people. The green light or green party entering within the human brain, bringing with it a coded message that is cosmically, scientifically, and molecularly correct. Now listen to Dr. Narby from his book, The Cosmic Serpent. He says, after all, there are all kinds of gaps and contradictions in the scientific knowledge of hallucinogens, which at first we thought were so reliable, we find out are not. Scientists do not know how these substances affect our consciousness, nor have they studied true hallucinogens in any detail. It no longer seemed unreasonable to me to consider that the information about the molecular content of plants could truly come from the plant themselves. However, I must admit, I failed to see how this could possibly work. So I want you to put this together when you consider meditation. Light entering into you via the pineal gland and touching the hema or green and providing to you an encrypted message that your DNA is capable of decoding. Let me repeat that. On the basis of Dr. Narby, on the basis of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, I am suggesting to you that in the same way that NASA has suggested to us that the light touching the chlorophyll causes this power, which amino acids and so forth to DNA, and that what Dr. Narby is talking about is the plants and so forth, and the stimulation of DNA. I want you to consider light entering into you via the pineal gland in meditation, touching the hema or green inside of you, and providing to you an encrypted message that your DNA is capable of decoding. And remember, supernova 1987A, the center is green, laser powered by flying crafts, green light, the power of herbs, the center of the spectrum, the center of the eye. So consider yourself. You're meditating, and you're sitting here, and gongs are going off, and you're saying, what's the sense of this? This is stupid. If there is such a thing going on to be from the outside, in other words, what am I saying is going to happen to you positively? Is that going to come from the outside? Or is it going to come from inside of your brain? Or a combination of both? Remember when we discussed ghosts? Some people see them, some people don't. There may be a vibration out there, some people pick up on it. So it could be something from the outside, but it requires something from the inside to combine with it for this individual then to basically have a hallucination, isn't it? I'm saying something that's really not there because I picked up something from the outside. But now maybe I know something now. Maybe that which was from the outside that I picked up, entered in, combined with the DNA, an encrypted message. I saw something, I understood something, I could tell something, I could write something about something that really wasn't there. But I picked up something from the outside. Energy which from the outside hovers in a spot, a sensitive mind picks up what was there, and voila, you have a ghost. When there is no ghost. You have what Dr. Narby is dealing with there. Something from the outside is taken in the inside, and it causes an understanding of something that these people have no right to understand. So he reaches a reasonably similar conclusion, and the conclusions are exactly what goes on in this room. So we're in good company with this laureate from Stanford University. Because this is what he says. And I don't feel proud of this, but I feel good about a man like Dr. Narby. And he just wrote this. This just came out in May. Maybe I would find the answer, he says, by looking at both perspectives at the same time. One eye on science and the other on the shaman. One eye on science and the other on the Bible. One eye on science and the other on the ancient writings. And Dr. Narby says, the solution would therefore consist in posing the question differently. It wasn't a matter of asking whether the source of hallucinations is internal or external, but of considering that it might be both at the same time. I couldn't see how this would work in practice, but I liked it because it reconciled two points of view that were apparently, divergent. So he continued his research, and he studied the experience of anthropologist Michael Harner, who went to the Amazon trying to understand their religious system. He said, I'm just here to, this guy Harner said, I'm just here to try to understand your religious system. We have our religious system, Catholics, Protestants, all that stuff. What's your religious system? And they said to Harner, if you really want to learn, then you've got to drink Irish sake. And he did. And after several minutes, he found himself falling into the world of hallucinations. He saw giant reptile creatures projecting scenes in front of his eyes, and he was shown the earth as it was eons ago before there was life. He saw an ocean and a barren land and a bright blue sky, and then black specks dropped from the sky by the hundreds and thousands and landed in front of him. There were huge, shiny black creatures and huge bodies, and they explained that they had to come to Earth to escape their enemies. They created life on Earth, they said, so they could hide inside the multitude of forms. And Dr. Horner said, I learned that the dragons were thus inside of all forms of life, including us.
Wow. This is the second.
And Horner wrote in his footnotes, and he since died, in retrospect, one could say that what I saw in that vision was almost like DNA, although in 1961 I knew nothing of DNA.
Wow.
Now consider, and I'll be done here in a second, how NASA just this month, released their Green Party paper, connecting light from above and green in Hema in humans and chlorophyll in plants with DNA. And just consider how just this month Dr. Narby from Stanford University has released this paper on green and the power of green.
That's good.
And Dr. Narby says this: there was indeed DNA, or there is indeed DNA in the human brain as well as plants. Given that the molecule of life containing genetic information is the same for all species, DNA could thus be considered a source of information that is both external and internal.
I love it.
Now, because of Dr. Horner, Dr. Narby had said, this is what I've been trying to imagine. How could something from the outside enter into a human body and convey a message to the inside? Wow, it's because the DNA in the plants is comfortable with the DNA, but they're the same as DNA, and they communicate with one another. I got it. It is possible then to bring into the inside something from the outside and set up a conversation, an intelligent conversation, which will then spin off and be a source of instruction to the person. Then if you sit in meditation and something from the outside enters containing DNA, whether it be in light or whatever it be, I'm going to say, and interacts with the DNA inside of your body. Stimulate. Don't forget, this light comes down. That chlorophyll or that Hema, it's not going to work until the light comes down. So the light comes down in chlorophyll and the amino acids, DNA. The light comes down in through the pineal gland, the amino acids, DNA. So it takes that light to touch the green in order for the DNA to start acting and to provide the information. Getting ready to wrap this up, but there's a lot of really great stuff to come from this. But let me leave you with this. Dr. Narby continued to study Dr. Horner, and he didn't find anything more relative to DNA. However, he was intrigued by references to the dragon and the serpent. When he read Horner's visions and he saw the dragons and the serpents, and Dr. Narby said, this made me think of the double helix of DNA assembled in its form, two entwined serpents. And it says in the Bible in 1 Kings 6:8, in speaking of the temple and the door to the middle chamber were in the right side and went up with winding stairs. And he found a book, Dr. Narby did, called Brain, Mind, and Shamanism by Geraldo Reichel Dameltoff. And Narby was stopped in his tracks by a drawing in that book of the human brain with a snake lodged between the two hemispheres. And he found a picture of two intertwined snakes, like a caduceus that your doctor wears. And in this shaman book, these two serpents symbolize a female and a male, a mother and a father, water and land. In brief, they represent a concept of opposition which has to be overcome in order to achieve individual awareness. The snakes are spiraling rhythmically in a swaying motion from one side to the other. So at this point, Narby considers the hallucination of anthropologist Horner in the Peruvian Amazon, in the jungle here. Now he's trying to figure out, thousands of miles away in the Colombian jungle, the people are saying the same thing. It's like the 100 monkey theory. How they couldn't communicate with one another. Both cases of reptiles in the brain, serpent-shaped boats of cosmic origin. And Narby says, pure coincidence? There was no way that they could have communicated. So the plot thickens concerning DNA. Green light, angles of light, messenger particles, angelic messengers, if you will. And then finally, and we'll leave with this, he picked up a French book called Vision, Knowledge, and Power by Jean-Pierre Chamille. And Narby says, I found a celestial serpent in a drawing of the universe by a shaman. Then another shaman was quoted as saying, at the very beginning, before the birth of earth, this earth, our most distant ancestors lived on another earth. All living beings were created by twins, who are the two central characters in the thoughts of the forest people. So, do you remember when we studied Mani and who spoke of God as the opposite to what we considered? And remember Mani said, the snake who talked to Eve was the good God. He wanted you to have knowledge and understanding. When Mani was asked who told him this, he said he met an angel. And they said, what was the angel's name? And Mani said he was called the Twin. And Narby analyzes this entire concept. He sat by himself, he sat in a room, and he thought, a Western anthropologist like Horner drinks a strong dose of ayahuasca with one people and gains access in the middle of the 20th century to a world that informs the mythological concepts of other people and allows them to communicate with life-creating spirits of cosmic origin, possibly linked to DNA. So I hope that you will continue with me in the study of Dr. Narby's work, because this and NASA's Green Party, we are arriving at not just a connection between light and the protein in green, but we also arrive at a knowledge of the DNA connection, a combination of external and internal DNA, and the coded messages being sent, received, and decoded in new states of consciousness. It is the first thing that I have seen that gives me reason to say, I think we are on the verge of a very, very logical explanation of what happens in meditation and how receiving that light, which then touches the hemi inside of us, can cause an activation of an encrypted message that has long been seated in the bodies of human beings, if you want, which message can then be decoded and be given to us as instruction in healing and so forth. There is no question whatsoever, and Dr. Narby, as he winds it up, that these people in the middle of the forest have received instruction from the plants, who themselves had been given that instruction by green light. So,
Full circle.
as I said last week, I encourage you to abandon the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, the Communist Party, and become a member of the Green Party and put a green light at your house, because it is your scientists like Dr. Narby and the people at NASA who are bringing you face to face with God. And it is the very same ones who claim to know God, who sit in pulpits, who are driving people farther and farther away from the knowledge of the true essence of life and creation.
Mrs. Chadwick, credit for you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Let me tell you two things. First of all, I sat there last Tuesday night at meditation, and I had this experience with, let me just say I had an experience with those. And I said, in this strange way of meditation, I said, you have to do something tonight. I said, I am tired of, I'm running out of ideas. I don't know what, you've got to do something. I said, make something happen. But then I said, oh, that's stupid. That's not the way it works. No hocus pocus is going to happen. So it didn't. We went home. Joan and I were home. Joan was in one room. I was in the computer room. Right outside of where I have the computer room I was working. And, where our little room is there, Joan's car was parked, close to the house looking right. So I just thought to myself, what a stupid thing. Asking for something special to happen. Right about 5 minutes after that, her car started blowing its horn and putting its lights on and off. And she came running out, what's going on? And I looked out, it wasn't anybody anywhere but this car. Lights were going on and off, and it's blowing, it's going boom, boom, boom. So I don't know. But that's the way they operate. You can't prove anything, but it is good.
Oh,
Yeah.
that light was shining.
Yeah, that was another thing, too. When we got home, and Joe noticed it first. This is the only way. That's why people think we're crazy out there, because it's the only way you can talk. You never get proof. You gotta. But as we got home, and it was dark around it, there was a white light stripe across the green grass. Perfect. Really, it was there. She saw it. I saw it. It was really there. It's never been. So anyhow, it was kind of crazy. But what I wanted to say then was, in the mail came an envelope. And I want to thank Maeve Chadwick from Jacksonville, Florida, who's been a longtime friend and helper with this work. And I want to say a special hi to her, Leonie Nelson, and all the people down in Jacksonville. Because she knows that, and she puts in her, I know it's, you and reading, you don't really have time. But she says, please read this. And she sent me this article from this science magazine of Dr. Narby and his experience with the plants and the green and the people of the forest. So I am very grateful for that. And I'm, grateful that I stopped to spend some time with it. Okay, we'll see you, and we'll continue with.
Awesome. I cut off the first part on accident, but highly recommend checking this guy out. William Donahue.